Right, so what I want to talk about is essentially there's the maintenance. The patch is technically live, but Rapi Red Hood, if you guys haven't paid attention to, she actually is not going to be available until New Year, basically, right? She's available in about a week, but here we get her animation, which looks very good. A new design is fantastic, obviously.
What do you think of me, Commander? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Man, she's so cool. Man, she has massive cake now. Holy crap. It's so nice to actually have Rapi being like upgraded now. So she's like an overspec. I've heard someone say that with overspec you can actually use them for Elysian as well, not only for Pilgrim Tribe Tower. What's her ultimate animation like?
I've got this.
Yeah, like every time you reach 100% charge, she fires like a big boom thing. Damn, that animation is so cool.
How heavy your burden has been.
Yes, there we go. She looks very, very good. But on top of that, they actually drop her abilities. So before, they just told us that she could be either burst skill 1 or 3. So we'll get to see exactly how it functions in theory. So here we have the skills. It will be the same pool tower as the Pilgrims. Yeah, but apparently they might also be used for Elysian. So we'll have to have a double look. So battlefield assessment is going to be your first passive. Activate at the start of battle and at the end of full burst. Interesting. So effect differs according to squad formation. Activates only the corresponding effects. Affect self if there are no burst stage 1 allies. So essentially, if you want to use her as a burst stage 1, you have to make sure that there's no other burst stage 1. So the way it works, I believe, is that if you have another burst stage 1, she will automatically be a burst 3, but she's the only one, then she will be burst stage 1. Okay, so affect self if there are no burst stage 1 allies. Combat assist changes to burst phase 1 continuously. There we go. Affect self if they are burst stage 1 allies. Removes combat assist. Affect all allies if in combat assist status when entering full burst. Cooldown of burst skill lowers by 7.48 seconds. Attack damage increased by 8.02% for 10 seconds. Affect self if not in combat assist status when entering full burst. Attack increased by 95.04% for 10 seconds. And damage to interruption parts increased by 48% for 10 seconds. Okay, so basically, if you have no burst stage 1 allies, she will be burst stage 1, and burst stage 1 gives her combat assist. Combat assist reduces cooldown of burst skill by 7.5 seconds essentially for all allies, and she will buff them by 8% attack. Now, if she is burst 3 instead, she does not get combat assist, so she doesn't buff her team. Instead, she will just buff her own attack by 95%, and her damage to interruption part by 48%, which is very powerful. So either she gets a very strong self buff, or in burst 1 she's lowering burst cooldown and increasing damage of the entire team by a lower amount, obviously. So I really like this because she's going to be able to be very versatile, which is very, very good. So she's very similar, obviously, to Red Hood, and she's kind of keeping that from Red Hood. Red Hood can be burst 1, 2, or 3. Here she can only be burst 1 or 3, but also, let's be real, with Red Hood, most of the time she's never using burst 2. Some people use her as a support with burst 1, some people use her as a DPS with burst 3, but rarely burst 2. Now, the good thing with Red Hood is that she's actually able to use like burst 1 and burst 3, or burst 2 and burst 3 in the same rotation if necessary. Here, Red Hood, Rapi, sorry, she's doing either one or the other. She can't do both, right? So there is some differentiation there. Now, on top of that, she has another skill 2, attachable projectile, that's her second passive. Activate at the start of battle, affects self. Applies damage as strong element to electric code enemies continuously. Okay, so the thing with her is that she's actually has a strong damage element to 2 type of enemies, both electric and wind, which is very, very cool. So, projectile attachment damage, 150.72% continuously. Projectile explosion damage, 100% continuously. Okay. So the way I hear it is that basically every now and then she's gonna be shooting those big drill thing, and the drill itself does 150% damage to the person it hits, and then it has an additional AoE. So the person being hit is essentially gonna be taking 250% damage, and enemies that are nearby are gonna be taking the explosion damage. So it has a little bit of AoE, which is very nice. Now, the attachable projectile activates every 120 normal attacks. There we go. So the effect, it launches the attachable projectile attached to hit locations. When entering full burst, projectile explode. Oh, so it attaches to enemy, but then it only explodes when you enter full burst. Okay. Projectile attachment damage, 88.11% of final attack damage. Projectile explosion damage, 88.11% of final attack damage. Okay. Naruhodo. Max ammunition capacity, 1 round. I think the 1 round here is specifically for the drill, most likely. Okay. Now let's look at the burst because I feel like we need some more context here. Alright, so the burst is Power of Inheritance. The cooldown is 40 seconds. She does have 7 reduction with the when she's in burst 1. When used in stage 1, squad support action style, affects self cooldown of burst skill minus 20 seconds. Okay, so if she's burst 1, she has a 20-second rotation, which is awesome because that means that she actually will be able to use a burst every 13 seconds, every 12 seconds with the additional reduction. Or is it only for allies? I mean, when it says all allies, I think it also counts herself, right? Affect all allies in combat. I think so. Alright, either way, it's pretty good. So basically, if she's burst 3, she is gonna have 40-second cooldown. If she's burst 1, it's a 20-second cooldown. Which makes sense considering that she can't be in a team with another burst 1 if you want her as a support, because she would automatically become a burst 3. So it's absolutely necessary for her to be a 20 cooldown burst. So cooldown of burst minus 20 seconds. Explosion radius increases to 100% for 10 seconds. Which means that essentially her drill attachment explosion is gonna be way wider, double the amount. We don't know the AoE exactly, but yeah, this is very interesting because what's very interesting here is that she kinda is like a machine gun user that has like a rocket every now and then, essentially. So it's kind of like a mix of both. But I think she makes sense. Alright. Affect all allies. Attack increased by 18%. Which will be a total of 28% with the other passive. When used in stage 3, high mobility close range combat weapon. So this is what happens when she's a DPS. Affect the enemy nearest to the crosshair. Deal 2800% of final attack as additional damage. Effect self, explosion radius increases as well. So regardless of her burst, she actually does have the explosion radius increasing by 100%. Projectile attachment damage increased by 421%. And her skill 2, attachable projectile trigger count condition, is lowered to 60 times for 10 seconds. So essentially, either you use her as a support and she's gonna be buffing the entire team's damage, plus lowering her own burst skill, or... So I feel like as a burst 1, she basically only has a 18% buff to damage for the entire team for 10 seconds. Which is not amazing. It's alright. Like if we compare to someone like Leader, let me see exactly. Let's see. Where's Nikke? There it is. If we look at Leader, like... That's a 66% for 5 seconds. So, I mean, 5 seconds is obviously lower, but, I mean, sometimes you only need that, like, right? It's very good. But here instead, we're gonna have, like, an 18% for 10 seconds. Which, I mean, even in the long term, that's not as much as this, right? Because even if you said, well, this is 5 seconds, the other one is 10 seconds, so you can double it, that would still be, like, a 38%, a 40% damage increase. That said, there are some characters that tend to be a bit more backloaded. So maybe some characters would end up not benefiting from Liter's damage if, let's say, for some reason their ability will deal damage after 5 seconds. That could be a thing where maybe in that situation you prefer someone that has a longer buff duration. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I feel like you can definitely use her instead of Liter if you want to. But like Liter's burst is so strong and so front-loaded that I'm not sure it's gonna be that much better. Now the thing is that on top of that, she also has like an additional 8% damage increase from the rest of her kit here, right? Because she also gets this. But now the thing is that the combat assist here that gives like 8% damage increase, this is when entering full burst. So essentially that becomes a 26% damage buff. Right? Because like this is 18 plus 8, that is gonna be 26%. If you double that up, that ends up being a 52. So it's a bit... It's not that bad. It's actually not that bad. It does last longer, so, you know, depending on the characters, depending on their skills and like their self-buff and stuff, it could have some pretty good value, obviously. So there's definitely the potential. I feel like she does compete with Leader to some extent. She's probably not going to be as good. Now, the thing is that obviously she also has cooldown reduction for the burst abilities here. She has a 7.48 second cooldown reduction, which Liter also has some reduction, but Liter's reduction is actually something that scales. And the thing is that with Liter, to have the full 3, 2, 5, 7.34 seconds, you need to burst kill 3 times. And with Rapi Red Hood, this is activated right off the bat. She gets a 7.48 second reduction the first time you full burst, which means that she doesn't need to ramp up her cooldown reduction. So this is not bad at all. Hey Neon Angel, I'm doing great, what about you? So yeah, there's definitely some pros and cons, I would say. But she's not like clear cut. I could say this as a okay side grade, let's put it this way. So yeah, there you go. But later, obviously, she also recovers like cover HP and stuff like that, which is pretty good. So there's that to consider. Meanwhile, her second passive does not buff the team whatsoever. It's just a pretty... she trades some more support ability in the skill 2 for more self-damage, essentially, right? Now, moving on. She is used as a burst 3 instead. She will have massive AoE damage. No, not massive AoE damage. Massive single target damage, being 2800% of a final attack to one enemy. And then she will be doing increased projectile attachment damage. The projectile attachment damage is the target being hit, being affected. This does not increase the explosion damage, but the explosion radius is increased, so they will you're more likely to hit more enemies. So this is pretty good, and obviously projectile is going to be sent every 60 times, every 60 attacks rather than 120 attacks, which means that during her burst, she's going to be able to hit more projectiles on the enemies, essentially, which is pretty nice. Overall, I think she's pretty good. I think overall, she's pretty good. Now, like... I think in burst, she's very strong. Out of burst, she's a little bit... because the thing is, like, her attack percentage increase is during burst 3. And the big increase is... Yeah, like, most of her damage is going to be during burst, but obviously she has a cooldown reduction on that, so it's not that bad. So I could definitely see potential. What's really good about her is obviously she's going to be very versatile because she can be used against 2 types of enemies, both wind and electric. So I could definitely see her being a decent support, a strong DPS, and obviously a lot of versatility because she's going to be able to be sorted against 2 types of bosses, which is definitely a plus. So overall, I think it's pretty good. I think it is pretty good. Someone is saying something here. Damage strong enemies on wind and electric. Yeah, that's all good. Alright, all good. Yeah, so overall I think she's pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to get her whenever she's out in the week. I'll be doing some testing and see what I feel like once she's officially out. But I like what they're doing with Kit. I like the idea of characters being versatile like that, being able to be used against multiple types of enemies, and having characters being able to be easier support as DPS is a really fun idea. And I feel like they really kept like the identity of both Rapi and Red Hood and made like a mix of the two, and I think it's very interesting. So I really appreciate that. So there we go. That's my thought on the character. I'm looking forward to when she actually comes out, and for now, I'm gonna be playing through the story. I'll probably upload that that playthrough on the YouTube as well. So anywho, cheers. OP for solo raid, definitely.